During a recent public mass, Cardinal Willem Ike spoke words that many have thought, but few have dared to say aloud. In doing so, he stood in defense of Cardinal Burke, but more than that, he voiced a hard truth: some of the deepest wounds can come from within the Church itself. His message was clear and fearless. What exactly did he say, and why has it stirred so much discussion? Let's walk through it together. Today, the Catholic Church is facing a troubling shift. There's a growing gap between the traditions handed down through the centuries and the pastoral choices being made by some in high positions. Those who remain faithful to the Church's long-standing teachings and practices are often given labels: rigid, old-fashioned, or conservative, as if holding on to tradition is something to be ashamed of. In this environment, simply living out the Catholic faith in its fullness, without watering it down or twisting it to fit modern trends, can bring isolation, criticism, and even public humiliation. And it's in the middle of this tense atmosphere that something simple yet powerful took place: a mass celebrated with reverence and heartfelt participation by three shepherds known for their deep fidelity to the faith. What happened that day was far more than a beautiful and well-prepared liturgy. It was, in many ways, a quiet act of spiritual courage, a living sign that spoke directly to anyone willing to look closely and truly understand. On July 31st, the Shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe in La Crosse, Wisconsin, opened a series of solemn celebrations to honor the 17th anniversary of its foundation. The shrine itself holds a meaning that goes beyond being a destination for pilgrims. While it is indeed a place where the faithful come to pray, it also stands as a visible and unshakable witness to that part of the Church which refuses to abandon its liturgical roots. It is a reminder that the heritage of the Church is not something to be discarded, but something to be protected, nurtured, and handed on to future generations. On that day, the Mass in the traditional Roman Rite was celebrated by Cardinal Raymond Burke. It was Burke himself, during his time as Bishop of La Crosse, who first dreamed of building this sanctuary. From the very beginning, he envisioned it as a permanent home for divine worship, a sacred place where the oldest and most revered form of the Latin Rite could be celebrated with all the reverence and dignity it deserves. The homily during this celebration was given by Cardinal William Jacobus Ike of Utrecht. He is one of the very few high-ranking church leaders in Europe who continues to speak openly and without hesitation in defense of truths that are often left unspoken. His presence alone sent a message of unity and strength, but his words gave it even greater weight. The anniversary events were not confined to this single day. Less than a week later, on August 5th, Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco came to the shrine to celebrate the traditional Roman Rite as well. On this occasion, it was Cardinal Burke who stepped into the pulpit to address the faithful. The sight of these leaders, gathered in one place and united in their devotion to the Church's liturgical tradition, made it clear that this was far more than an isolated gesture. This was not nostalgia dressed in fine vestments, nor a quaint custom brought out for special occasions. It was a living testimony to the Church's lex orandi, the law of prayer that shapes and safeguards her faith. In an age when many sanctuaries are left with empty altars and dwindling congregations, here the faithful gathered in reverent silence, ready to receive the sacred mystery with devotion. The image of three shepherds, Burke, Ike, and Cordileone, standing together was a sign that the flame of faith is still alive and burning brightly. During the celebrations, Cardinal Burke reminded those present that the shrine has been officially recognized by the Diocese of La Crosse as one of the churches where the traditional Latin Mass is celebrated regularly. He emphasized that choosing the ancient Roman Rite is not about clinging to a personal preference or indulging in romantic memories of the past. Rather, it is a living and ongoing proclamation of the Christian mystery in the world today. Cardinal Ike echoed this sentiment in his own words. He told the faithful that every detail of the most ancient form of the Roman Rite points to a profound meeting between heaven and earth that takes place each time the Holy Mass is offered. In an era when many liturgies are altered, improvised, or stripped of their sacred depth, his message was more than a reminder, it was a clear warning. Within the unchanging stability of the received liturgy, and within its beauty that no human mind could invent, the faithful find a place to rediscover and deepen their faith. Cardinal Burke's steadfast dedication to preserving the Church's tradition is one of the main reasons he is sometimes considered a controversial figure by his critics. Yet the reality is far simpler. He has not sought controversy for its own sake, nor has he tried to create division. His mission has been to protect what has always been Catholic: the faith, the worship, and the teaching handed down from generation to generation. On July 31st, during the solemn anniversary Mass at the Shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe, Cardinal William Jacobus Eck delivered a homily that stood out for its clarity and boldness. It was the kind of speech rarely heard today from someone in such a high position within the Church. He did not merely give a reflection on the liturgy or offer polite words of encouragement. His homily was something much deeper. It became an act of truth, proclaimed directly from the pulpit in the presence of Cardinal Burke himself and the many faithful gathered that day. At one striking moment, Cardinal Eck turned his attention to Burke and spoke with a conviction that immediately commanded the room. He voiced aloud what many faithful Catholics have thought but few have dared to say openly. Looking directly at him, he declared, "Do you want me to tell you what your real problem is? You are Catholic. Simply Catholic." Those few words cut through every label, every misconception, and every attempt to fit Burke into a political category. With that statement, Eck firmly rejected the habit common in the media and sadly present in certain church circles of branding Burke with political-style labels. Terms like traditionalist or ultra-conservative are often applied to him, as though faithfulness to a liturgy celebrated for nearly 1500 years were a political stance rather than a sacred duty of conscience. Eck reminded everyone that such words conservative, progressive belong to the vocabulary of politics, not to the life and mission of the clergy. He also made it clear that Burke has never rejected the Second Vatican Council. On the contrary, Burke fully accepts its teachings and, like many priests around the world, regularly celebrates the Mass in the Novus Ordo form. For Eck, this was proof that accusations against Burke are not rooted in any refusal to follow church reforms, nor in an extreme or rigid ideology. The real reason some oppose him is more uncomfortable to admit. He proclaims the Catholic faith in its entirety, without watering it down to suit popular opinion or reshaping it to match the spirit of the age. Then came one of the most powerful moments of the homily, later reported by Gloria TV. Eck spoke of a reality that many would rather leave in silence. He revealed that the most intense criticism and the most painful humiliations Cardinal Burke has endured did not come from the secular world, or from those outside the Church. They came from within. They came from fellow priests, from those in positions of authority over him, and from circles inside the Church that simply could not tolerate the clarity of his witness. And yet, despite the personal cost, Eck affirmed that Cardinal Burke has served the Church with unwavering courage, with a spirit of dedication, and with an example that continues to inspire the faithful. The homily ended with words so plain and unmistakable that they left no room for doubt about where Eck stood, or about the respect and gratitude he held for his brother in Christ. There is a particular kind of wound that cuts more deeply than most, and it is the wound inflicted from within from one's own spiritual family. 5 days after Cardinal Eck's bold remarks, that same commitment to the Church's liturgical heritage was made visible once again. On August 5th, the Archbishop of San Francisco, Salvatore Cordileone, celebrated the Mass in the traditional Roman rite at the same shrine. This was not a symbolic gesture made for ceremony's sake. It was a deliberate and public sign of unity within the Church, in perfect continuity with the celebration that had taken place just days earlier with Cardinals Burke and Eck. During this Mass, Cardinal Burke took the pulpit to preach, and his words reinforced the same message his life and ministry have expressed for years. The traditional liturgy is not a relic locked away in history. It is vibrant and alive. It is deeply woven into the very identity of the Church, and it remains a sacred place where countless people continue to encounter Christ and renew their faith. According to Gloria TV, Archbishop Cordileone had already made his thoughts known before the celebration. He saw the event not simply as a date on the calendar, but as a personal and communal moment of grace. He hoped that it would strengthen not only his own spiritual life, but also bring renewal and encouragement to all who would be present. In an interview with Incregister.com on July 30th, He expressed his anticipation for sharing this time of grace alongside Cardinal Burke and the many Catholics who would come. His words were simple and humble, yet in today's climate, where any clear expression of attachment to traditional liturgy can be met with suspicion or hostility, they stood out as a quiet but firm declaration of principle. Archbishop Cordileone's commitment to defending the Eucharist is not something that began in recent years. It has been a consistent hallmark of his ministry, one that has often placed him in the public eye and, at times, in difficult situations. His willingness to stand firm on Catholic moral teaching, even when that stance is unpopular, has made him both respected and criticized. Yet it is precisely this courage that made his presence alongside Cardinal Burke and Cardinal Ike so meaningful. When these three shepherds stood together at the shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe, they were not simply participating in an anniversary celebration. They were presenting a united front, a living example of what it means to be faithful to the mission of the Church regardless of the cost. Their unity was not built on personal agendas or political alignments, but on a shared love for the faith and a determination to protect its most sacred treasures. One of those treasures is the Eucharist itself, the source and summit of the Christian life, as the Second Vatican Council so clearly teaches. In recent years, debates about the Eucharist have intensified, especially concerning how it is received, who may receive it, and how it should be celebrated. For many faithful Catholics, the Eucharist is not merely a symbol or a ritual. It is the real presence of Christ, body, blood, soul, and divinity. And because of that, it must be treated with the utmost reverence. Cardinal Burke has long been one of the most vocal defenders of Eucharistic reverence, insisting on proper catechesis and discipline in how the sacrament is approached. Archbishop Cordileone has also become a leading figure in this defense, particularly in his own archdiocese, where he has emphasized that reception of the Eucharist must be preceded by being in a state of grace and living in accord with the Church's moral teaching. This is not, as some critics have claimed, an act of exclusion. Rather, it is a call to true communion with Christ, which can only be authentic when it is rooted in truth. Cardinal Ike's words during the anniversary Mass fit perfectly into this larger context. His public defense of Cardinal Burke was, in many ways, also a defense of the Eucharist and the liturgy that surrounds it. He reminded those listening that fidelity to the liturgy is not about nostalgia or a preference for a certain style of worship. It is about safeguarding the way in which the Church approaches the mystery of Christ's presence among his people. When the liturgy loses its sacred focus, the faithful risk losing sight of the one at its center. The traditional Latin Mass, which all three prelates have supported in different ways, is one expression of this fidelity. Rooted in centuries of Church history, it carries with it a language, a rhythm, and a structure that point the soul toward the transcendent. In a world that often reduces the sacred to the ordinary, this liturgy serves as a reminder that the Mass is not our creation, but a gift we have received. Its beauty, its formality, and its silence are not barriers to participation, but invitations to deeper prayer. In recent years, restrictions on the traditional Latin Mass have been a source of tension within the Church. Some see it as an obstacle to unity, while others see it as a vital link to the Church's heritage. For bishops like Burke, Ike, and Cordileone, the defense of this liturgy is not about resisting Church authority, but about ensuring that the richness of the Church's worship is not lost to future generations. Their presence together in La Crosse was a quiet, but powerful statement that tradition and renewal need not be in conflict. History offers countless examples of times when Church leaders had to stand against pressures both from within and outside the Church in order to protect what is sacred. The early Church Fathers defended the truth of Christ's divinity against heresies that threatened to distort it. Saints like Athanasius and Thomas More paid heavy prices for standing firm in the face of political and ecclesial pressure. While the challenges of today may look different, the principle remains the same. Truth must be spoken, and the faith must be safeguarded, even when doing so is costly. The events at the shrine in La Crosse can be seen in this same light. They may not have been accompanied by public controversy or dramatic confrontation, but they carried a message that is just as urgent. In an age when many are tempted to adapt the faith to fit cultural expectations, these shepherds stood as witnesses that the Church's mission is to bring the world to Christ, not to reshape Christ to fit the world. Their unity also sends a message to the faithful: you are not alone. In every age, God provides shepherds who will guard the flock, teach the truth, and celebrate the sacraments with reverence. These leaders may be few in number, but their example can inspire countless others: priests, deacons, religious, and laypeople to remain steadfast. As the celebrations in La Crosse concluded, the image of these three men standing together remained in the minds of those who witnessed it. It was more than a moment in time. It was a sign of hope. In a church often portrayed as divided, here was a visible reminder that unity is still possible when it is rooted in truth, in tradition, and in the unchanging presence of Christ in the Eucharist. In the end, the legacy of this gathering will not be measured by headlines or social media reactions. It will be measured by the quiet strengthening of faith in those who were there, and in those who hear the story. It will be measured in the renewed commitment of Catholics who, inspired by this witness, choose to approach the altar with greater reverence and to live the faith with greater courage. And perhaps, years from now, when people look back on this moment, they will see it for what it truly was: not just a commemoration of a shrine's anniversary, but a testament to the enduring power of truth, the beauty of the liturgy, and the unwavering presence of Christ in His Church. Matt, God bless you. Amen.